Hello everyone, my name is Hein, Kriek, current Director of Rugby at Maritzburg College, previous Head Coach SS Schools, and Director of Rugby Netherlands.
Tell us, who is Hein Kriek?
That's a good question. No, I'm just joking. I'm an educator at heart that loves rugby. And if you really got to ask my wife who I am, she'll tell you I'm a golfer at heart that coaches rugby and also teach. I went away from teaching for a little bit and I'm back in the classroom now as well, and I think it's a good thing as well. But I'm just down to earth, Afrikaans, boertjie van Nelspruit, Malalaan, and just down to earth, trying to do my best to make a difference in people's lives.
Hein, you are off and running.
All right. Once again, good morning, everybody. It's a real honor and privilege. And since I got back to South Africa, meeting up with Tertius and just I'm honored to be part of this journey that he's on. And I do think it's an exciting journey where we're going. I want to talk to you this morning, first of all, about high performance and culture. And I got to give you a little bit of context on how I came about getting interested in high performance and culture, and how do these two work together. The buzzword these days is everybody's like, yeah, high performance, and you need to be high performance, and you've got to do it like this, and you need the best. You need the best of everything. And then sort of we moved into a part of rugby, and especially sport, and even in business, where people started talking about culture. And culture is, I don't want to say it's a hot topic, but it's something a lot of people are interested in, and you get gurus in and they can fix your culture and everything will be ready. But I'm not 100% sure we all really understand the two concepts separately, and then understand these concepts, how they work together. So to give you a little bit of how I got about getting interested in this, is that I was fortunate enough to study in the UK on my travels across the world and everything. I ended up doing some studies in the UK, and one day we ended up at Manchester City for a day, just to go see what they do. And from the outside, you would perceive this team of superstars together, Pep Guardiola running the show, and you would think, yeah, all right, these oaks are quite okay, but they're a bunch of superstars. And we were three friends. We ended up in the lobby, and down the stairs came every single one of those superstars after a team meeting, and each of them greeted us by the hand. And Kevin De Bruyne ended up realizing I'm Afrikaans and speaking to me in he's in Vlaams, and I'm an Afrikaans, and we ended up having a proper conversation. And I thought to myself, how can these oaks earning millions and with with all respect, actually don't really, if they walk past me and walk past us and didn't greet, how would that have changed his life or changed my life? And just the fact that these oaks stopped, greeted us, and we delved a little bit deeper into them. But what is happening behind the scenes there, and why are they actually so successful in the way that they are? And I then came about and said, okay, I want to delve a little bit deeper into how do we get to where we are, and how do we get high performance and culture together. So my question to you, and I would really love you guys to jump in here and talk to me, is which one do you think came first, or which one do you think comes first? Is it a high performance, or is it culture? I would love to get your thoughts from everybody out there. Speak to me.
Okay, Hein, well, everybody else thinks about it for a moment. For me, I guess you've got to have the right culture before you can achieve high performance. I think you'll have your odd players that have the right mentality and they'll always achieve. But if you're talking about the whole team, I think it needs to be an infectious environment where everybody wants to achieve before they can achieve. So that's my 2 cents.
All right. So you're basically saying that culture comes first and then high performance.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else wanna weigh in here?
Yeah, I'd like to agree. I think that if you got to build a culture first.
All right.
Of wanting to improve, wanting to constantly improve and be better. And as a collective, if you have a whole bunch of individuals, who become a collective, who all are thinking the same and wanting the same things, then high performance can then come into play.
All right. I'm actually glad you guys see it in that way, because it's quite an interesting way to look at it, and it will actually, hopefully, if we carry on, I can show you, in my eyes, there is no right and there's no wrong. Yes, anybody else?
Yes, Hein. Just from my side, I think I do agree with those gents, but I also do think that high performance could be a culture. If you do certain things in a certain way, that is your culture. And if it's about being on time, being prepared, it's actually your way of life. So which it is your culture. So I think they can exist both at the same time.
I love it, Clint. And I do think that is the way where we are going. So the two of them together, and this is what you need to understand. You can have a great culture and things don't work, or you can have all the high performance mindsets and stuff that you have without a great culture. You can try to have them independently, but independently they don't work because they're so interwoven with each other. And I believe that if you do get these two things right, you get magic. And that's the top teams in the world currently. If you delve really deep, I reckon if you go to the Bulls, if you go to what the Springboks are currently doing, if you go to the All Blacks, if you go look at what the guys at Harlequins, Exeter, Bristol, the top teams in the world, they are all, I think they have a mix of these things, and that's why they are successful, all in their own right. So the first thing I want to do, gents, is I want to look at what is high performance. And I really do think we need to understand high performance as a subunit on its own. And in doing that, I want to introduce you to a little country in the West Indies called Jamaica. Can anybody tell me, if you hear the word Jamaica, what do you think of? What do you think of?
Captain Morgan.
Bolt.
Okay, Usain Bolt.
Cool runnings.
Say again?
Cool runnings.
Cool runnings. Okay. All right. That's an interesting one. For those of you, Jamaica's got roughly about 4 million people, and on this small little island is the two Francis brothers, Stephen and Paul Francis. Stephen in 1999 started an athletic club called MVP. And if you think about that now, MVP is 12 years old. Subsequently, Stephen Francis has moved on, and his brother Paul has taken over. Now, I want you to have a look at the two gentlemen in the picture, and I want you to, your first reaction in that, if you see that, do you see high performance?
No.
Right, probably not. You do not see high performance. But these gentlemen have coached, or through their athletics club, in world championships, they have won 27 golds, 26 silvers, and 11 bronze. Now, you need to remember, world championships only comes around every second year in athletics. And in a 12-year span, that means they probably had 6 world championships to participate in, where their athletes has participated. To make that even more astounding is that in Olympic Games in those 12 years, they've achieved, and that includes the last one now in Tokyo, 15 gold, 12 silver, and 10 bronze. So, you know, you look at these oaks, and you look at, you know, if you go to an athletics club and you go, yeah, I'm going to join, and those are the 2 guys meeting you, you're going to go, yeah, you know what, it might not be the place I want to be. Then you look at the stats, and you go, hang on, this is where I want to be. So Fraser Price, they are all part of athletics club, and this was taken at the last Olympics. And if I tell you this is where they train, you're going to laugh. And this is where they train. That is Fraser Price running. I mean, you can see the dust there. And my question then goes up, but is high performance a mindset, as Clinton said previously? Is high performance, how is it linked to culture, or is high performance the equipment and the facilities and everything that we have? Which one is it? And it becomes a bit of a challenging question, because schoolboy rugby these days, and how I want to link this with schoolboy rugby is that, I mean, we are fortunate where I'm now here at Maritzburg. We've got a gym with indoor cricket nets. We can host about 120 boys at one go in our gym. We've got rugby fields for days. We've got every single thing that we need. And there are schools out there with even better facilities. Does that make us a high performance organization? Does that make us high performance? Point. So I want to play you a video clip, and hopefully you can hear the sound. This is Stephen Francis talking about the road to success, and I want you to listen very, very carefully, because it all ties in at the end. Hello?
People must not be too comfortable in a performance environment. They should not really be uncomfortable either. But they must be forced to understand that the road to success is largely uncomfortable. It is. If you're enjoying yourself too much, it means that you're probably not going to reach where you're going. Right? That I would say, and I would tell some of my kids that in life, along the road to success, it must be 80% hard. I mean, 80% of the time you must be wishing that you were somewhere else. You know, and if you're not doing that, then you need to make an adjustment and go even harder. And most of the time I see performance centers in Australia, in Britain, in Sweden, and wherever else. And I'm there saying, well, these guys, obviously the emphasis is for them to be comfortable. You know, they don't have enough sacrifice. There's not enough sacrifice for the people to achieve what they really could, I think. You know, you have to be exposed to your threats, right? And understand that if you don't work as hard as a person who is seeking to knock you off, you're probably going to have a problem. You know, and I believe that strongly that, you know, if a performance center must be designed with work in mind and not with comfort.
All right. Some interesting words. I would like your feedback, gentlemen, on what's the relevance in the modern schoolboy program these days. What's the relevance of that on us and high performance? Anybody? Speak to me.
Yeah, Hein, I think the caption there, the road to success is largely uncomfortable, says it all for me. Because, you know, coming from coaching largely at smaller private schools, there's no easy way for any of them, or even just as a coach, there's no easy way to get there, but absolute grind and just continuous, effort, I guess. There's a couple of players who at the moment are playing, that I've coached, who are playing in France and in England. And when we chat, that's what comes up majority of the time, is that, we took the hardest route possible almost to get here where we are. And it's because of that even today I'm willing to work slightly harder, or harder than whoever it is that I'm competing with, just to make sure I remain in this space, because of what it's taken to get into that space. So yeah, I definitely do relate to that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and if I can also just jump in here, as somebody who coaches at Kastelsvlei Comprehensive High School, it's a school that's pretty much renowned for our rugby, but if you come to our school and you look at our field and our facilities, it's not fantastic, because we're a really poor school. But our training sessions are incredibly intense, really, really difficult for the players. We kill them, for lack of a better word. We really do put them under a lot of pressure, and that's why when they do play teams that are bigger, more talented, maybe better conditions, they are able to cope with that and keep the high intensity, because it's not comfortable when you're at a training session of ours. We have 20 cones and we share the cones with 3 different teams. We have 6 tackling bags and we got to take turns when we use it. So there's a lot of alternatives, a lot of body weight training, a lot of really tough. That picture you showed there of the dust settling while one of those guys were running, that really rings home to me. That's exactly what our training sessions look like. But that's not an excuse, and we really do push them, and that probably is part of the uncomfort. They're never really maximally enjoying the sessions, which then means that when they get to the games and it's uncomfortable and it's physical and they're under intense pressure and the crowds are against them and all that type of stuff, they're better equipped to handle it.
Is that range still on that second field on the far side?
Yes, it is, sir.
I want to be a bit controversial and ask a question. With the way we're educating coaches these days, I sort of get the feeling that we must make sure the lighties are always happy and the lighties are good and everything, and I get that. We'll get to the culture part and where that fits in, but I have a concern currently that within, and I'll make this relevant to schoolboy rugby, that our top schools, and I probably reckon this is where the biggest challenge comes in, is that I take where I am now at Maritzburg, I take where Clinton is at Rondebosch, I take where Kat is at St. John's. I mean, we have every single thing that we need for a boy to make it to the top. The challenge is, how do we, within that structure, make it uncomfortable for players to perform at the highest level? How do we, I mean, how do I take everything that I have and still make it uncomfortable? And I think that's the biggest challenge we have. The oaks that are at the smaller schools, and if you are at Kastelsvlei and those places, it's actually a lot easier for you to make that road to success uncomfortable for the player, because it's just by nature that it is uncomfortable. And the challenge, for instance, if I relate it back to the athletics that we're talking about, is that the Oaks in the States, how do they make it uncomfortable for their athletes to run against these Jamaicans that, I mean, they all come from the same background? How do they make it uncomfortable? And I want to leave it as a question for people to think about, and we can talk about it later. Oh, sorry. Next. So how I came about this.
Sorry, Hein.
Yeah.
We have a question from Ivan. Ivan, you can mute and ask the question.
Wait.
So I'm one of these people who's lucky enough to hopefully work with Kat Lego, as I know, at St. John's. And I've worked at St. Stephen's before. I was also at Rondebosch Boys before that. I know Castle's Flat been at the Settlers Hein, Belleville previously. For me, as large an academic teacher, maths teachers worked with a lot of Olympiad kids, but we also worked with kids who take maths literacy. We often talk in the academic space about push and pull factors. So we talk about, in the junior grades, there's teachers pushing you to work, your parents telling you to work. There's the school telling you to work, otherwise you get detention. But really you want to transition in the grade 11 to 12 phase of kids knowing why they're working, what they're working towards, and that transition becomes pull factors.
Yeah.
And dare I say it, the kids that I've worked with who've gone on to continue with sports in the tertiary space, they have been unique because they've known what they're working towards. And I think too often at these luxury schools, sadly, everything's on a plate. There is no need to continue playing varsity cup. There's no desire to play club rugby. There's no desire to go. So they'll play first team, but first team's the end goal.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I think, you look at these guys running for Jamaica. They want to get out, want to get out of an economic or social circumstance and go further. I mean, dare I said, the kids from Castle's Flat, we look at this wonderful images of Geo Apollon and Cheslin Colby and these superstars that have come from, that sort of background where if they didn't necessarily work hard from their own internal drive. And I think too much at school level, we're still focusing on a physical disposition. And I think more and more at schools, we actually need to work at a mental disposition.
You are hitting the nail on the head, and you'll see in the second part that we're going to talk about. I always ask the question when we talk about a schoolboy rugby program, how do you measure success? There's different ways of doing it. And when I get there, Dash, please remind me that we speak exactly what Ivan spoke about now. Is that how do we measure success? Is success the amount of games that you go unbeaten? Is success the amount of players that go on from your program to achieve higher success? Or is success just producing bloody good human beings at the end of the day? I think it's an open question that we can all we can mull about at the end, and I do think it's a relevant question. I would like to hear what you guys think about it. To move on quickly, because I'm going to touch on this in the end. RASMUS ANKERSEN, currently director of football, involved with Bedford, and everybody knows they've moved up into the Premier League. And he wrote 2 books. And if you have not read either of these, I would strongly recommend that you do, especially The Goldmine Effect, and especially in the country that we live in, where how do we identify talent and then take that talent to the top? And what Rasmus did is he went around the world, and one of the places that he did visit was MVP Sports and Track in Jamaica. He also went and said, but why is 30 of the top women in the top 50 of the golf rankings, why are they all Korean? He went to the Australian women's football team. He went to the All Blacks. He went to the Kenyan runners in Kenya. All people that dominate the sports that they are in currently. And he said, but why do they dominate? Where does the talent come from? What do they do with talent? How do they unwind it and unwrap it? And then the next book that he wrote was Hunger in Paradise. And he went and said, okay, but cool. If I've now reached the top, how do I stay there? And he looked at, for instance, Nokia. Why did Nokia fall from grace? They were the biggest cell phone company out there now. I mean, they're not there. You either have a Samsung or you have an iPhone, one of the two. What happened to that? And I want to share a few learnings of this with you because it's got direct relationship with what I think is high performance. And the first thing that we learned from the Goldmine Effect, and I only took 3, is what you see is not what you get. And that is so relevant. You must be so careful with what you see in your athletes. You must be so careful with what you see in your program, because what you see on the top might not always be what's cooking. You might see a kid walking down the street, or you might see this stringy guy walking down. And I'll use a player that we have here, Spar Noble, fullback. I mean, you see this kid on the school ground, he's no higher than a brick. and you would think, oh, okay, hang on, you know, can this kid play rugby? But you put a 15 jersey on him, you put him in the first team, and he's magic. And like everyone said, with the physical, we look at, yeah, the kid must be big. He's South African, he must be a big rugby player. But I think we're moving to a way where you know, smaller players are coming through, and I must say, Cheeseman Colby is probably the icebreaker in that. So be very careful what you see, and as a coach, do your homework, because there could be high performance in somebody or something that you think there's not. The second thing, success is about mindset, not facilities. If I go visit a school, and where I was in the world, if I visited a club in the Netherlands or in Czech Republic or somewhere in the States, and they told me, yeah, but I need this, my very first instinct is always, but no, you don't. You literally, to play the game of rugby, you need a ball. And I mean, defense coaches out there would tell you don't need a ball, but you need a rugby ball, or some form of thing representing a rugby ball. You don't need the artificial pitches. You don't need the big gyms. You don't need the lush green fields. And linking back to, and I'm so glad Clinton said at the beginning, it's a mindset. It's the way we think about it. You can perform at a high performance level without all the bells and whistles that we currently do have or want. And then the third one, is also, it's a mindset. If your mindset is high performance, your mindset is, I want this and I will get this and I'll do whatever I can, you will make it to the top, hands down. If your mind is right, you know, the world is built in such a way these days that we can get to the top. When you do get to the top, there's three things. You always got to make yourself look like a beginner. And this is why I'm so blessed and so thankful to be here with everybody, because it's a public holiday, and here we are learning from each other, and sharing ideas. Always go back to the beginning. You've never learned enough. You've never known enough. There's always something out there that triggers something. Kill the illusion of perfect conditions. It does not exist. You can chase perfection, but once you think you've reached perfection, there's always something out there that will change that for you. And that if it ain't broke, consider breaking it. So my philosophy is that if you think you've achieved, and you are, and that perfect illusion that you have, smash it, break it, and start again. You've got to work in cycles where you work towards something, break that down, and start again and rebuild that. And I mean, the old saying, it's easy to get to the top, but once you get to the top, how do you stay there? You got to start again to get to another top or another level that you set for yourself. Anything from you guys on that? Okay. So looking at all of that and having a mindset of, all right, high performance is a mindset. High performance is, I don't need the facilities. You actually got to have a system or have a plan of, okay, how am I going to put high performance in place? What actually does it look like if I got to put this on paper? And it consists of three things. You got to have certain systems. We'll chat about each one of these independently. You got to have components that underpin those systems, and then within the game of rugby that we play, there are individuals, and those individuals are part of a team. And what do I do with those? So if we look at effective high performance systems, and if you are running the rugby in your school, or if you are in charge of the rugby at your school or your club or wherever, the very first thing you need to do is you need to understand your executive management, the people that runs the show, your headmaster, your senior management, your old boys, your who else is there? The governing body. You need to find and understand, what do they want? What is the main goal for them within a rugby program? And you need to be aligned with what they want, because ultimately or you got to sway them that they are aligned with you, what you want. You got to go both ways. The second thing is that your coaches, you need to find a way to identify coaches that are willing to coach within your system. You need to find a way to develop those coaches, and you need to find a way to keep those coaches. Before we started, I spoke to Texie, and due to a lot of things that happened here in KZN, end of the season, we are losing our first team coach, assistant coach, 15A and 16A rugby coach. But you need to have a succession plan on, okay, who's coming in, who's taking over, what are we doing, and what am I going to give somebody that does come in, or what am I doing with the guys that are in the system that needs to take over? How am I going to develop them and move forward? The third part of this system is the players. How do I identify players? How do I develop them? How do I keep them? And all of these need to be aligned. Your players need to be on the same wavelength as you as a coach. Your players need to know what is the outcome we desire. Do we want to play attractive rugby? Do we want to play winning rugby? Is the outcome for us to move players on to professional era? Those types of things. But the biggest thing and the very first thing you need to do, and you need to do this every single year, is you need to align these three role players within your system.
Hein, you're muted.
Am I back?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, man. I don't know what happened there. Sorry, where did you lose me?
You were just starting to talk about the next step, which is, I guess, the components.
Okay, cool. All right. So, gentlemen, they need to be aligned, and people drive this for you. The second thing then is, okay, what are the components that we need to put in place? You need to identify your vision, values, and behaviors, because those are the foundation that everything is built on. Everybody's now aligned. You've got the right people in place. You know the people is all pulling in the same direction. You know how to keep them. But what is actually expected of them? What are the behaviors? What are the values? What are the visions? What are the things we're going to put on top of the stands? You know, you see respect and humility and all that. What are those things that's going to drive you as an organization, as a school, as a rugby program? You also need to then see, okay, but what needs improvement? And you need to be honest. You'll see when we get to the culture part, we're going to talk about that. We need to talk about what are we gonna innovate? So how are we going to be different than anybody else? And how are we going to be creative in the way of doing that? Because we can't just copy and paste from one program to another, because every single program or every single school, every single team is different. We also need data to drive us, and there's you'll see that the last thing there is the psychological part. What are you doing psychologically for your players? If you take our first team lost in the last minute against Glenwood after beating them the previous week, what are the processes that we put in place? Because for those boys, not being able to play rugby in 2 years' time and then playing a big match like that and coming out on the other end after 80 minutes, losing in the last minute, what message are you sending those boys? What are we doing with those boys to help them mentally? Because, you know, I think we tend to forget what a big mental thing the game of rugby for these boys are. And for some of them, like we've said, it's their future. What are the medical aspects that we look at for these players? What are the sports science part? A lot of schools are driving that hard and doing the fitness part. And if you are at a place where you can't afford video analysis, what are you doing? Are you videoing with your cell phone? What are you doing to get data to drive your program? Then the last part, and this is probably the most important part for me, is then the team and the individual aspects. And I want to divide this into three parts. There's the rugby part. So what are we doing on a technical front? What are we doing on a physical front? And what are we doing on a tactical front to take our program forward? We'll look at, when we get to the school rugby part, But those are the three things as a team and as an individual, what are we doing? But also, how am I looking after the boy in his psychological state? What is the lifestyle that we are promoting for these players? And what are we doing for them personally? And if you can get this snapshot ready, and if you can get this snapshot and get everything that underpins that, you will you'll have a proper high performance program without even looking at the culture. Now my question goes back. If you look at these things, how much of that are driven by behaviors and the way we do things? Is there any comments on this?
Hein, I have a couple of, well, maybe one question that could lead into a couple here. I don't want to speak about, if you're going to cover this later on, that's fine, but specific enough for me, and look, I'm here to be honest and I'm here to learn as well. Yeah. So if any of my coaches watch this, don't take it personally, but this is an issue that we have at our school. Yeah. We do have a situation where we probably have 3 dedicated coaches that are there to achieve maximum excellence for the players. And then I have about 4 or 5 guys that are there because it's in their contract. They have to coach rugby because they're not involved in any other sports. So I think that's very important when we look at those succession plans, is to get the coaches to buy in and to be on board with this high performance program. But if they have the mentality of, listen, this is just something I'm forced to do, I don't really want to do this, maybe give me a little bit of advice. How can we change that mindset? Because I've tried a few things. I've tried to make it more fun for them. I've tried to put initiatives in place. It's not really going well.
That's just, I do think, and you're not the only one that has that problem. When I get later to the rugby program, I'll show you how I'm looking for a way to find a way around it. But it comes back to the why. You got to understand, or we got to get these guys to buy in. Why do we coach? Why are we out there? And your why, for instance, at Kastelsvlei Hoërskool will be a lot different than my why at Maritzburg College or Clinton's why at Rondebosch. Our whys are different. And you got to sit with these guys, and if it takes a few beers and a braaivleis to do that, you got to get them around the table. So what we did is we sat down when I got here in February. I got all the coaches, and we came up with a one slider that says this is us, that basically tells everybody what is our why. And once we've done with this, if you please will remind me, I'll show you that slide, and I'll show you what the coaches came up with, and they bought into that. So the next step when we get to culture now is we're going to start talking about accountability, and you've got to keep these guys accountable for what they came up with, what they bought into, and that it's a very fine line. It's a very difficult thing to do, especially if they're just there to make up the numbers. But you've got to find a way to get them to buy into, but we're here for the boys. You know, you're not out there to get a paycheck. You're there for the boys. And if they're not there for the boys, unfortunately, you've got to find another way or somebody else to do it. That's unfortunately the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I'd actually love to, if we're not going to interrupt your presentation, I'd love to hear what some of the other guys say. I know we have a couple of directors of rugby or a couple of first team coaches. Is this something that's happening at other places, and how are you guys dealing with it, if it is?
Yeah, if I can just jump in here. I think I'd have to agree with Hein in terms of, you know, just getting the guys to understand the why. And again, it's just part of the process. If the coaches don't understand that they're there for the boys, you know, if you have to be there for a boy to teach him a subject in the classroom, you know, obviously you can definitely add value to that boy or to that girl, off or outside of the classroom. Yeah, and I think, you know, if you have conversations, you know, with those individuals, you know, get to see where they're coming from, but also try and align that to where the program is going. Try and align that to the vision and the purpose of why, you know, the rugby at your school is going in this direction, and their importance and value that they can add, once they can get back on the bus and drive this thing forward.
So for instance, Tashes, you guys can see this. It took us a whole Friday, a few beers, and a whole Saturday to come up with this. And every one of the 45 coaches within the college program bought into this, and this is what I hold them accountable to. So you'll see we talk about our boys are student athletes, which means academics comes first. We want rugby for them to be a life-changing experience. Through what we do, we want to ignite the inner rugby spark within them through a holistic development program that enjoys, and everybody here coaches with the common goal of the player that comes through your hands must be in a state to play for the first team one day. So everybody from the Oak in under 14 E's and F's are coaching that player in 5 years' time must be in some way trying to play for the first team. That's why we coach, with all of the other stuff. We want to make a positive impact, and we want to empower the coaches. And then ultimately we want to produce passionate, proud, humble, and confident young men. And this is what we hold them accountable to, and this is what the coaches all agreed on. And nowhere in this is there the word you need to win, or nowhere in this is there anything rugby related. But it took us a few days to come up with this and say, okay, but we're going to buy into this as college coaches, and this is where we want to go. And the challenge then is for you as the director of rugby to not lose sight of this one slide and say, okay, hang on, but you lost on Saturday. Why did you lose? And he will, and then the coach will come back. But listen, the guys had fun, and and we shared this with the players. So for instance, if you can come up with something like this, and your coaches can agree on this, then half your battle is won.
Awesome, thanks. Thank you very much, Kat and Hein.
Okay, let me just quickly get the other one back. All right, so now we want to start talking about culture.
Yeah, it's Hein. Can I just maybe come in there as well?
Wait.
I think that's fantastic to get that buy-in from all the role players, because otherwise you end up being the guy standing on the top of the roof and you screaming all the stuff, but that doesn't filter through. Yeah. So what I've also realized in my dealings with coaches is making sure that you bring the right guys on board, like-minded guys, because it's such a mixed match of guys that come through. Like, we've got a whole lot of old boys that join our coaching team, and a couple of guys that play at False Bay or UCT, and they kind of want to bring that little flavor back to Bosch, and they don't sometimes understand the importance of your language, your dress, your how you work about what is how do we define what we are. And I think you've got to be very clear with it, otherwise it's a losing battle. So I think that's a fantastic initiative that for them to buy into who we are.
And Clinty, we share that with everybody. So our old boys know exactly what the coaches are coaching and what we are about. So that alignment suddenly becomes very clear. When the headmaster calls you in and says, what about this and this? You go, but hang on, meneer, you were also in the meeting where we all bought into this. So we made sure the alignments are 100% clear. And when we start talking about culture now, is that the accountability is there. So if a player feels that the coach is not inspiring, or a coach lacks, or the coach feels that the players are not doing their part, we actually have a forum where people can go, but hang on, you're not doing your job. We had a thing with the boys in our A and B team boys where feedback from the boys is about coaches need to be better. We're not good enough, and they have that voice to get that out there. And suddenly, everybody's accountable for what they do, which creates, when we get to the end, creates uncomfortable conversations. But I think we're going towards a stage where it's uncomfortable, but we're comfortable having those conversations with each other. All right, can we move on, guys?
Yes, you can go.
Right.